have another exciting interview today with one of my business partners and good friends, Sam Knickerbocker. As you'll know in a few minutes, he's pretty awesome. He's a very down-to-earth guy. One of the things I really like about him is that he's a family man. He does have his priorities right. He's a man of faith, and I think we connect in many levels. So I'm really pleased to have him here on this interview. I want to make sure that he has the opportunity to share a little bit of all his awesomeness with all of us. And with no further ado, Sam Knickerbocker, welcome. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, how is it that you're so amazing? Give us all the deets.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, Federico, for providing this opportunity. The thing that I like most about Federico, I don't know if there's one thing, but there's a lot of things that I like about him. As I've got to know you over the last few years, I just love your heart, and I love how much time and energy you put into serving and really thinking about other people and focusing on helping other people become their best selves. There's a lot of people who think more about themselves than others, and I've never even once seen you put yourself ahead of others, but I also haven't seen you disrespect yourself or be used by somebody. I think that's a striking balance that I think you've mastered very well from a leadership perspective of how do you honor somebody else and make sure that they feel like they're valued and important and put first, and at the same time making sure that you're not taking advantage and just kind of used by somebody else. So I think that balance you do very well, and something I look up to and respect about you a lot. And then you're a great father, great husband, and when you talk about your wife and your kids, it's always with reverence and respect. So I love those things about you. And I'm just grateful to be here and be on this show with you. My story is not as exciting in some ways, right, as Federico's, but 7th of 11 kids and grew up homeschooled in Grantsville, Utah, in a tiny little home. And there was just not a lot. My parents were Pizza Hut drivers, so there was a lot of discord in the house. And what's fascinating about the way I perceive that I was raised, especially now raising my own kids, my parents did an awesome job. Although we didn't have a lot physically, my parents were readers. They encouraged us to read great books. So we grew up learning from people like Zig Ziglar, learning from Bob Proctor, learning from Earl Nightingale, learning from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's not his actual name. That's the book. That's the name of him. Robert Kiyosaki. There you go. So we learned through reading and being educated well. Now there's a pro and a con to that. One is the pro, our minds were programmed for success at a very young age. And so that's kind of a win. The downside was, as we were getting programmed success, all we were witnessing and living was poverty, like kind of extreme poverty, anxiety, depression, domestic violence, like the whole gambit of that, right? So oftentimes in our life, we get taught things that are really, really beneficial and true concepts, but because those concepts aren't modeled in a positive light, then it's really easy to discard some of that knowledge and say, oh, well, that clearly doesn't work because I was taught all that, I was preached all that, and it didn't end up being the case. And so that can go into relationship, that can go into your religion and your faith and what you believe about God, and that can go into business and go into anything. That concept of when you're hearing information, being taught information, but then you're not seeing it come to fruition, how long do you have faith and constantly try to become better, even though you haven't got it yet, right? And as a child, children often work in more absolutes. And so if we're being told something and it's not happening, we are perceiving it as not true or a lie. But as an adult, we all know that faith doesn't work like that. You know, faith is something you have to put a lot of effort into up front in the hope that it gets better, right? Faith, there's a saying that faith is belief in things that are not yet seen, right? They're not yet physical, but they're absolutely true. And that's where I think, for me, a big part of my life stems from and wants to help other people understand that all the truth out there, it's still true, even though they haven't seen it in their life, and they get to become the creator that actually influences in their life. And your book, I forget the name, Slaying Your Goliath. Is that the name? Goliath. Say again.
Slaying Your Goliath.
Oh, good. Yeah, I did get it right.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, so phenomenal book. If anybody hasn't read Federico's book, you absolutely should, because it tells his whole story from when he was a childhood to where he is now. But there are some big key moments where Federico had to choose into belief and faith and hope and a future that no part of him saw or was experiencing. And for me, that's why I believe I connect so well with you, Federico, is because that's something that I feel like I've had to overcome in my life, although not in near the same circumstances. The same concept and thought processes have had to happen. And I think if we can help get more people to see the benefit on the other side of faith, then maybe they'll be more inclined to have faith and act in faith and create in faith. So that's me in a nutshell. I love what I do. I'm married, have a beautiful wife, Charlie, and then 3 kids, Declan, Quincy, and Paige. And they're my life. I work from home. I serve people to teach them how money works and how they can master their time and their resources to build the life of their dreams and create a legacy that they're going to be proud of.
Yeah, you do that well. And thank you for your positive feedback on my book. On that note, one of the things that stands out on your business is that you focus on building a legacy, and you teach financial education, how money works. And I know I've learned a lot from you, and I've asked you all kinds of questions, and sometimes I feel like, oh, poor Sam, he sees my phone call and is like, no, what does he want now?
Never. I never think that, Federico.
No, and I know that you're always open to sharing information and helping others, and that's really important for me. I think that's one of the other things where we really connect, because I feel that you truly want to help others. Doing what you do, either whether in your business or outside of the business, there is that pure heart inside you that truly cares about a fellow man and woman, and you're truly trying to make a positive impact in their lives, which is one of my goals as well. So I think that is also another pivot point where we connect, and I want to hear a little bit more about this whole concept of building your legacy, because although you teach how money works and money is important as a tool, and the world to an extent revolves around money in a certain degree. However, you don't focus on just money. You focus on the why behind gaining any financial success, or saving, or preparing, or educating, being knowledgeable of how the world is spinning and how the key part of money plays into all this. But the ultimate goal is to build a legacy, to focus on your dreams, not just money itself.
Yeah, no. So there's a few quotes that are really important to think about. The first quote that I would say is, "Wherever you go, there you'll be." So think about that. Wherever you go, there you'll be. When you're trying to accomplish something or build a legacy, so many people operate in society today from a victim mentality, that somebody else's actions had put them where they are. And it's very easy to operate that way. And I know that, again, one of the things I love about you, Federico, is that's not how you operate. Everything that happens, you seek for, what's the reason this is happening? How can I benefit? How can I serve with this information? So everywhere you go, there you'll be. If you're running from a past or running from a circumstance, and you think, I'm going to go from this circumstances to another one, and it's going to be better somewhere else, more often than not, you are, unfortunately, where you ended up, and you didn't change. And so the circumstances rarely change. The outward circumstances have far less influence on you than you think. Not to say that, the average of the 5 people, not to say that environment's not a factor. Obviously it is. But you have the ability to be an influence on your surroundings, or those surroundings are going to influence you. And you have to make that decision internally. And so if everywhere you go, there you'll be, then you have to start thinking, okay, well, how did I get to where I am? And when we start to think about how did I get to where I am, again, clearly there's outward circumstances that happen to us that were not necessarily our choosing. But in many cases, they were not actively not our choosing. As in, we weren't actively choosing something else. And so we allowed the coasting of the universe to land us where we needed or where we ended up, because we weren't intentionally directing our path. So some people say, well, I didn't choose to bob off and float around in the ocean and run into this island. Yeah, you didn't choose to, but did you have the sail? Did you have the rudder? Were you oaring? Were you doing things to actively not end up there? Right? And we have to start taking accountability, because the more accountability we take, then the more ability we have to create a different existence. And that's what I love most, is these people who often feel, and I felt this way at times, lost, confused. How did I end up in this position? As I've inspected how I ended up in this position, I started to recognize all the choices that I made or didn't make that led me down to that path. And so when it comes to your financial literacy or teaching people how money works, the reason I choose that avenue is because I feel that money is a really good scorecard of decisions that are made daily. There's many, many financial decisions that are made daily. Some of your financial decisions are on autopilot. You've put them on auto bill. You've put them on auto draft, right? So you don't even know what's happening. You've automated your life to the point that you're not in control of your life. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. In many cases, that can be helpful. There's a book called The Automatic Millionaire. What if you automated saving? You automated investing? Well, that could be a beneficial thing. But if you automate your spending and you're just spending willy-nilly, then that could be detrimental to your overall goal, especially if your objectives change and you don't know how to change your automations that you've put in place. And so helping people recognize where they're at from a financial perspective helps them understand where they're going to end up if they keep down that road. And this is where the legacy comes in. If you ask yourself, am I where I want to be? Am I where I expected to be at this age? Am I living the life I want to live? Am I going to be remembered the way I want to be remembered? Most people answer no to all of those questions. And the reason is they're so focused on what somebody else says their goal should be. Survival, money, whatever. I love something Federico says all the time. I say, hey, how are you doing? And he says, I have this little habit. I like to eat. It's a weird thing, right? But the thing is, here's the thing. If you understood Federico's earlier childhood story, you would understand that phrase way better. That there were times that he didn't get to eat. There were times that he wasn't allowed to fulfill that habit. So now the fact that he gets to feed himself is a major blessing. He understands the blessing of that, where most people, they're gluttonous and they eat, they throw food away. They're not respectful and honoring the things that they're getting. And so it's not necessarily about whether you have a lot of money or a little bit of money, or a lot of time or a little bit of time. It's about, are you being intentional and creating the existence that you want? And I believe that that's what legacy is really about. Are you going to be remembered the way that you want to be remembered? And that's why I focus so much on the mentality behind legacy, because everywhere somebody goes, they're going to be there. And changing your circumstances is not going to completely change your outcome unless you change from the inside. You become a new person, you get new information, and you start acting on that new information. And then you can be somewhere different. But the number of people I see that run from one circumstance, maybe one bad relationship, one employer, one underpaid position, and then I need a new job, I need a new thing. So they go to another person who's going to undervalue them, underpay them, underrespect them. And it's you're just bouncing from the same situation to the same situation. There's actually a song, I don't know when I first heard this, probably when it came out. There's a song by Justin Bieber and Chance the Rapper. Okay, and I don't know the name of the song, but in the song, they're talking about, I think it's like "How Long Will I Love You" or something like that. Anyways, they're in the song, and Chance the Rapper starts doing his little rap in the middle of the song, and he's talking about how this relationship with the girlfriend is not necessarily working out the way he wanted it to, but he's kind of pleading with the girlfriend. He says, look, they say the grass is always greener on the other sides, but that's not true. The grass is greener where you water it. So I'd rather stay here and work on things with you than go ahead and start something with someone new. And so often that's the case, that we actually need to work on things with ourselves first, and then maybe the situation works itself out and we can stay there. If it doesn't, then maybe, yeah, we do move on. But at least we moved on because we needed to, rather than because we didn't like our circumstances. We weren't running from something, we were running towards something. Another example.
Yeah, I really like that, especially because, I'm one of those crazy people that I want to change the world and make it a better place, and rainbows and butterflies, which is sometimes seems like a fictitious thought, but it's not. We all create our own reality. And one of the things that I've learned throughout times is what you just hit on the head of the nail. If you want to change your world, if I go out there with my sign, hey, world change or whatever, I might not be as successful or have the impact that I want. But instead, if I focus on what I can change, which is myself, and I get a better education, I become a better human being, I start caring about others, and whatever I feel or I think is gonna help change my immediate world, by default, it impacts other people, and like a domino effect, it ends up changing the world. A quick example, when I was 17, for whatever reason, I decided I was going to be vegetarian. And back then, I'm talking about, like 33 years ago, vegetarian wasn't even a thing. Like, I would be invited somewhere, and then ask me, hey, do you want to eat this? I'm like, no, I'm fine. Why, you're not hungry? No, I'm okay. I don't eat meat. Some people didn't even understand what that meant. Like, oh, okay. Do you want pork then? Like, no, thank you. I just don't eat meat. Oh, how about chicken? And they couldn't even grasp the concept of somebody not eating meat. Even I had some very heated conversations with my grandma, because she had the tough love that her way of loving you was being strict and trying to control your life. But she truly loved me. And one of the things we were at odds, she felt that I was completely whack because I didn't want to eat meat. So fast forward now, in the present day, because back then it was really tough being vegetarian. If you were a vegetarian, you didn't know how to cook, you're in trouble, because there's nowhere out there, very limited menu if you eat out, and food, and it was very challenging. Today, you can go to a fast food restaurant and order a meal that is either that impossible meat or veggie patties or whatever it may be. Almost everywhere has a vegetarian option. So although I can't say by myself I changed the world in that sense, we're now being vegetarian more accepted, but I did my part. And by doing that, other people everywhere, all over the world, all over the US, all over everywhere, felt this same initiative. And without us having meetings, getting together, let's do this, nothing, just by the way I guess we voted was by purchasing our food, by just being ourselves. It wasn't fast, but nowadays the world is completely different in that sense. So although this is a specific example, I think it applies to what you're saying, to people's lives, whether it's relationship, whether it's money, whether their career, happiness, and all these things. And I really like that about you, because you have a very concise and clear way of saying complicated things in ways that all of us can understand. And you did touch up on a point that you kind of went a little fast on it. And I'd like you to maybe, if you can expand, because some people that may be watching us might not be familiar with this concept. You said the average of five. And I know in my life I've seen this where I've had to stop having a relationship with some friends because their goals were completely opposite to mine, or were going in a direction where I definitely was very clear I did not want to go. And if you can share a little bit more of what that concept means, also if you can enlighten us, even myself, because one of the challenges I have after the fact, I understand the concept and I share it with other people. I tell them, hey, the average of the five people, and I'll let you explain all the details. And it's really hard for me to help people understand without falling in later on and coming back to me and saying, you were right, I should have listened. Well, you should have listened back then and you wouldn't be in this situation. So it's a little bit frustrating when you're truly trying to help someone, give them like little golden nuggets that's gonna hopefully help them in life or whatnot, and it either goes over their head or they undermine you, they don't listen. And I think you're very good at getting a point across without saying I'm right, you're wrong, but just by pure education, which is one of the things you're very strong at, but also looking at the bigger picture. So I'll stop there to give you
no, thank you. So let's actually start with the bigger picture and work backwards, because that's how I view it. Okay, so in relationships, my wife and I have these conversations all the time. We observe other people's relationships, and I'm not saying that we're right or wrong, right? Because in my mind, take it or leave it, I don't actually believe in right and wrong. I gave up believing in right and wrong probably 5-ish years ago, because what I discovered by believing that something is right or wrong, whether you believe it's right, if you're believing something's right, then you're emotionally putting energy behind a certain belief system. You're attaching your identity, you're attaching emotional energy to a belief system or a way of being. And on the contrast, you're also you're attaching emotional energy, even though you don't think you are. When you decide something's right, then you're also attaching emotional energy that everything else but what you believe is also wrong. And so when you're attaching this emotional energy, where focus goes, energy flows. And so you have to be really careful about where your focus is going, because if you're too focused on being right or something being right, then in contrast, you're also creating the opposite. So when you think of like positive, negative neutrons, when you think of a magnet, if you create a supercharged magnet over here, it's either going to attract or repel everything else. And so we have to be really careful about what type of energy we're putting towards something. So rather than being right, I don't want my being to ever be right or wrong. I don't want my being, my energy ball that I exist inside of right now, that takes on a physical form. I don't want that to be right or be wrong. Okay, I want it to be progressing towards my desired outcome. Okay, I want it to be able to be molded and shifted and shaped to what my desired outcome is. This is why creation is so important, is we have to determine what we want to be. So when we talk about the average of the 5 people, there's nothing wrong or bad, good or bad about being the average of the 5 people. My question is, are you actually being an influence? Are you intentional about the influence you're having on those 5 people? Or are you just showing up hoping that all of their energy is going to come to you and you're just going to become something? Then you're passively accepting whoever they are. You've lost your identity. You've just become whatever the accumulation of they are because of the energy transfer. And so for me, I think starting at the end goal, and like I mentioned, my wife and I, we look at this and we say, look, why are people trying to be right, especially in relationships? Why is one partner trying to be right and the other one's trying to be wrong? Then it automatically creates this tension of right and wrong. And it can be of the stupidest things. It could be like, what color is your blanket? It could be, what kind of light bulb should we have in our house? It could be, did you mop the floor today? It could be, will you take out the trash? Whose turn is it to do the dishes? It could be anything. Anytime you decide who's right and who's wrong, you've now picked energy sequences that oppose each other, diametrically oppose each other, okay? And so for me, I gave that belief system up and I started seeking what is our desired outcome. And that's neutralized the energy of both my wife and I, because I'm not attached to being right. If you think that we're going to get to this desired outcome faster through a certain method, then I have no problem molding my energy to attach to that, to try it out, see if it works. And then if we end up somewhere that we didn't plan to be, then we can reassess and say, didn't seem like that was the adequate change that we needed to make. What if we tried a different change? And we're able to move around and be fluid with our goal in mind. So when it comes to the 5 people, looping back to that, I don't feel like I've ever had to get rid of friends. And the reason for that is I'm more intentional about my energy most often than anybody else I know. I mean, there's other people who are just as certain, and sometimes we get along, and sometimes it's like, you know what, our energies don't connect. They're not wrong for being them. I'm not wrong for being me. Our energies are just not in alignment, and that's okay. But what happens often when you start to level up your energy and start to be more certain about the end goal that you're trying to accomplish, then the people around you who are, for lack of a better word, in chaos energy, they haven't decided their definite outcome. They stop choosing to be around you. They stop choosing to be part of your 5 because your energy sequence is too dominant. And they say, man, either like, I don't want to be like Federico. And they select out of friendship with me. But I always want everybody I know to be with me. You come be with me. I want to influence you. I want to help you. I want to help you get better. But if you're not going to attempt to be better, then likely you will stop associating with me before I stop associating with you. And that way, my hands are always, in my mind, emotionally clean. I've never written anybody off. I've been written off by many people, but I've never written anybody off because I actually my belief is that my path is going to get me the desired outcome. I'll use a kind of crass story, but it was really funny. I was sharing a lot of this about 5 years ago as I was going through my transformation of belief and getting pushback on Facebook, right? So I had this gentleman from Texas. He reached out to me and he's like, well, so you don't think anything's right and wrong? And I was like, nope, I don't. I decided I'm against that. And he's like, well, what about, and we were of the same religion, what about looking at pornography? I was like, well, I don't know. Like, what's your objective? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Because if your goal is to be addicted to pornography, how on earth are you going to accomplish that goal without looking at pornography? Like, come on, so is it bad or wrong? Well, depends on your objective. If your objective is to be free from those things and not engage in those things and not have that be part of your life, then it would be less effective and not helping you to be looking at or viewing those or consuming those pieces of content. But if your objective is to be a purveyor of that, guys, there's people who make millions and millions of dollars rating, purveying, creating, all of that. So what's your objective? Is your objective money at any cost, or is your objective a wholesome mind at any cost, right? What's the objective? And once you remove the right and wrong and you just look at objectively, then you actually start making choices from an evolutionary perspective that promote happiness more than sorrow, are more wholesome, more clean, more committed to service and what I believe is love than ever before. Once you get clear on your objective, the quickest path to accomplish freedom is through wholesome, loving, unshackling yourself from any form of addictions, and really going all in that way. And so many people miss the mark because they're worried about being right. And often, this is another thing that's fascinating about humans. Have you ever got frustrated with somebody? Right? Yeah, tons of times. I know I have. Most of the time that we are frustrated with somebody else, it's actually a reflection of being frustrated with ourselves, not knowing how to deal with our own inadequacies. So we project, when we see our own inadequacies, the things that we don't know how to handle, when we see those in other people, we fight against them, because it's easier to fight against somebody else than fight against your own soul. It's easier to condemn somebody else for their behavior than fight against our own soul. So what you'll find often, anytime you see somebody take a mega staunch, I hate this, I think politics are this, I think people shouldn't do this to their family, I think whatever, just wait about 5 to 10 years. Almost always the most ardent, outspoken people against something are actively participating in that behavior in their own life. Almost always. That's not my choice. It's just the facts of the matter. If you're somebody who's like preaching integrity or honesty or whatever, you're probably somebody who's not experiencing that much in your life. And that irritates you. And so now you're saying everybody else should change, everybody else should be better, but not me. And so that's why I seek not to counsel other people about what they should or shouldn't do, but just say, hey, this is how currently I'm operating my life because I feel like it's going to help me reach my objective the best, but I'm open to change at a moment's notice, right? I don't want to be the person who says that behavior is good or bad, because rarely does it turn into good emotions on either side.
And that reminds me of that saying, when you point your finger at someone, three fingers point back at you. So usually if there's something that you don't like about a person, a situation, it's a reflection of something that you don't like about yourself. But it's easier to blame it on someone else than take accountability and figure out what's within you that's causing that feeling or that reaction, and fix it back to what we were talking. Want to change the world, want to change that person, you can't change the person, but you can change whatever is triggering that inside you, and then that person is not going to be as strong, influential in your emotions as they are currently. So
well,
I
maybe
really
that
like
person
that.
doesn't even need to change. Maybe that person, there's another video, it's kind of a cute little church video, but it's a play on the phrase from the Bible where Jesus Christ is saying, before you talk about the beam in somebody else's eye, get the mote out of your own eye, right? So it's this video of this woman who's judging her neighbor for hanging up dirty laundry to dry, washing a dirty car, or like leaving her car dirty, but all this stuff. And then her husband kind of recognizes what's going on. So then, unbeknownst to her, overnight, he goes and he cleans the window. And then she wakes up and she's like, oh, I'm so glad she figured out, how to clean her laundry properly and how to do all this stuff. And it's like the reality was nothing changed with the other person. The window or the lens that the judgmental individual was looking through got cleaned. And so how often in our lives do we really need to inspect the lens we're looking through rather than worrying about whether somebody else is doing what they should or shouldn't do?
Yeah, I love that little story. I know one of the things I want to make sure we touch on is just, and let me know if I have the phrase correct, but the essence of being a creator in alignment in love. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So back again, a lot of this enlightenment for me was probably 5 to 7 years ago that it clicked. I'm still learning every day and still growing, but a big transformation happened a few years ago where I went through a lot of breath meditation and really focusing on how could I understand my own existence. And what I got back to through detaching myself from everything in this world, I got to ultimate connection is what I would call it. And in my level of ultimate connection or nirvana, or there's tons of different words for this area of your life. But for me, I experienced it as absolutely connected to everything in the universe. And I experienced that, and my definition of that would be unconditional love. Absolutely. No questions asked. Like, we are all connected. Just like I love my toes, I love my hands, I love my knees. They all form a different role in my body. I don't wish harm on any part of my body, but I also don't expect my toes to be a knee. I don't expect my knee to be my heart, right? So I love and respect everybody in their own form, performing their own function. Well, so is my body, so is the universe. And so if we are all connected, if everything's connected, I'm connected to you. Even though you're in Arizona right now, I'm in Utah, we're discussing through Zoom. There's literally an unbroken chain of atoms between you and I. There's no separation. There's distance, but there's no separation. That's one way to think of it. The other way to think of it is all there is separation. 99% of our universe is space, and only less than 1% is actual matter. Right? So there's two ways to look at it. But at the end of the day, our energy frequencies are absolutely connected. The question is, what's the distance between that connection? And that's a choice more than an actual physical location distance. So if that's the case, and I'm connected physically to every other person on this planet, the people who are doing horrendous things, the people who are doing great things, the rock that doesn't seem to have any energy, but it does, it vibrates in a frequency, right? If I'm connected to everything, then my goal at this point is to help the collective, right? This is where we stop trying to be, oh, I want my knee to be right. Everybody should be a knee. No, I want the whole body to function properly. I want the whole body to function in a way that's going to enhance and complement every other part of the body. And when I read the scriptures and I see Christ in his intercessory prayer on the Sermon on the Mount, he's talking about, hey, how can we all be in God and God in us and be all in one together? When I think of this analogy that Christ was using, it's an analogy that's universal in all religions, this concept of being one with each other. And it makes the most sense to me in the concept of energy. And that's just the way my mind works. Other people experience the world differently. But for me, it makes the most sense in energy. And if we're all one, then neither one of us needs to be right or wrong. We all need to complement each other and help each other improve. Pain is a really, really helpful tool in our body. Our body senses pain and informs us, hey, we need to stop acting in a certain way. We need to be more aware of this area, right? So when other people in the universe are experiencing pain, we can say, hey, you shouldn't experience pain. You shouldn't act out. You shouldn't be angry or whatever. But how is that any different than your muscle kind of being upset when it's being treated poorly or being bruised and visibly showing, hey, leave this area of your body alone. It needs to heal. Okay. So we have these areas, these pockets in the world where the same type of thing happens. And there's a way to have compassion for those individuals. So when I think of being a creator, I think of what am I doing? Okay. You're doing your part. How am I creating my part to make sure that I'm not a drag on the system and I'm actually helping the system run better? I'm actively seeking, how can we increase the collective to be better rather than how can we just increase my one part? I don't know if you've ever seen somebody who overdevelops one muscle. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then if you watch bodybuilders, you see them and they can like change how they flex and they're showing every little tiny muscle that they've developed. And it's like, I didn't even know our body had that muscle. Where did they find that? Did they like go and sew it into their body? You know, it's just like, I don't think our body has that. But all of our bodies are pretty much made the same. There's not vast differences between the human body across races, cultures, colors, doesn't matter. Like there's not a lot of difference really. And so when you think about that, we all have the same things. It's just what did we choose to develop? And are we, as part of the collective of society, and in my opinion, of God, are we becoming our best part of that system? And that's where I think of creation. What do you feel like your calling is? And are you actively trying to become the best part of that and fulfill that role the absolute best to enhance the people around you? And that's what I think you do really well, Federico, is you never are selfishly looking at yourself, but hey, how can we come in and serve? And how can we help everybody rise together? How can we help everybody have more faith? How can we help everybody be more positive? How can we help everybody see more happiness and joy in their life. And not to put yourself down. You understand your role as the knee, but you also are absolutely lifting everybody else up as the thigh or in the femur or the toes or the hands. You recognize your power as a knee, but you also recognize everybody else's power as what their form and function is.
Yeah, and I really like how you brought it all back and to the importance of the why, our purpose. So back to one of my initial statements, yeah, you educate people how money works, but that's not the main, most important driver or objective. It's just a means to an end. So if you'd be kind enough to share with the audience, first of all, like a little bit of how your mission, how you contribute to also promote other people's success, whatever that means to them, and how can they get a hold of you, like your social media, your website, any way that if I want to hear more, if I want to learn about how money works and not just in a transactional manner, but from that vision of building my legacy, of becoming a better person, of understanding myself, of having that quiet time to breathe and connect and find out who I really am, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so first we'll answer how people get a hold of me if they want to. You can go to my website, samknickerbocker.com. You can also go to pretty much any social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. It's sam.knickerbocker or at sam.knickerbocker. And that's the best way to get a hold of me. I answer on all those platforms, and I'm eager to help. On my website, samknickerbocker.com, you can actually go and schedule directly in my calendar a 20-minute phone call just to chat and catch up. So that's there. But as far as how I help people, I think the biggest thing, I think of money a lot as like maybe the blood that flows through. So when we're checking our pulse from a health perspective, that's really what we do with the financial system. We're checking the pulse of your life. Are you on track? Is it beating fast enough? Are you moving fast enough? Are you reaching your goals? Or are you like almost dead? Right? Is it so stagnated that nothing's changed in your life for so long that you're dream flat, that you're not actually thinking that anything else is possible? You're just existing rather than living. And so the first thing I always do is start with people's dreams. What do you actually want to accomplish? What are you hoping for in your life? And then from that conversation, then we go inspect, we check the pulse and say, okay, so you want to run a marathon, you want to go do this, you want to have this type of body for CrossFit. Okay, well, this is where you're at. This is your baseline. This is where you're at now. This is where you want to be. What changes do you feel like you could actually make in your life? It's not up to me to tell you what to do with any part of your money or your time or anything. It's to give you a clear ruling and like representation of where you are and where you want to go. And then together we can chart the fastest, most efficient way to get there. For instance, we're going to drive down from Utah. We pull up on our calendar, the fastest way, and putting that in air quotes, right, is to go through Flagstaff and by Page, Arizona and down, right? However, if there's a storm or there's a potential storm, it's only 34 minutes longer, miles wise, to go through Las Vegas. Okay, so we have to make a determination. Do we want to go over the mountain pass and get stuck in a snowstorm for 30 minutes? Or would we rather go through Vegas, the longer way, more miles, more out of the way, all of that, but a safer path, a more consistent path? So you have to make that choice. Where do I want to end up? And likely, because of the snowstorms and systems that are coming in, we're probably going to go through Vegas. We're going to go the longer way to be more efficient in our travel. And so sometimes in life, that's what we have to do. We have to choose the more efficient path rather than the shortest path. Sometimes people try the shortest path and they get stuck for a long time because it didn't work out. And that happens all the time in finances. People trying to find a shortcut, trying to make quick money, trying to do these things. It's like, that's not how it works. You got to do it the right way, go the longer way sometimes, not always. Sometimes it is the shortest way is the right way, but sometimes it's not. And you got to be able to have a determination of when to go the long way, when to go the short way. to ultimately go the most efficient way to get you to your destination on time. And that's what I believe my role is in how money works system, is to teach people how, like, what are the storms coming in, how are the roads, what are the speed limits, and to show them everything they have so they can make a good decision about them reaching their destination the fastest.
That's a great example. And I know we met through a leadership event, and I think this also showcases the importance of surrounding yourself with people that support your vision, that you can learn from or teach or share. That way we can all grow together. And it does require an intention to get there. Because as I went to that event where we met, we've came across other events as well
Mm-hmm.
and learned a lot of things together side by side, which is always very exciting to me. I love that interaction and having the opportunity to learn from others, and not only that, but have a friend to talk it over with, and maybe and you caught things that I missed or saw them in a different light, or then I was able to hear about this event and I shared it with you. And I think that's the power of, I started as wanting to improve my situation, either financially, education, emotionally, whatever it may be. And that decision helped me make it to that leadership event. And because I took that step, the fruits of the labor are then I have a great friend in you. I met other amazing people through that event. We've connected. So I think I tell the people, don't take your decisions lightly, because any decision you make can open up a brand new world, brand new experiences, one way or the other. And again, not good or bad, but what are the kind of doors you want to open?
Mm-hmm.
What are the people you would rather connect with? Who can you help? Where can you learn? And I know we're close in time because you have an appointment. So I, if you can just wrap this up with last thoughts, invite people to follow you on your social media
Mm-hmm.
and get to know how amazing you are. If there's any events coming up, let us
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So there's a few events coming up that I think are absolutely worth attending. And I don't know when this is going to air, but these are the next events that are coming up in Phoenix, primarily because that's where I live and that's where I do events. But we're actually going to do a wine and wealth event on April 10th down at X Phoenix building in downtown Phoenix. It's free. Everybody's welcome. But the goal there is to bring in business leaders and people from around the community to learn how can they maximize and reach their goal the fastest when it comes to increasing their financial literacy and understanding what it is that what tools they have at their disposal to reach their goals the fastest. So that's what that event's going to be. The next week, or yeah, literally the next week, we're doing a mastermind. I don't know how many people go to masterminds. I know it seems like there's a lot, and masterminds seem different to everybody. But this mastermind is a very tight knit, limited space mastermind. We bring in high power business leaders. And as we bring them in, our goal is for 4 days that we're going to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner with these people, spend time, do fun activities after. But pretty much everybody at this mastermind is going to be speaking, right? And so a lot of times you go to a mastermind, you have people who are just like attendees, and then you have speakers, and you just sit there and listen and listen and listen. That's so different than this one. This one is experiential, and almost everybody who's there is there coming to learn and to share. Just like I was talking about being a creator, being part of the system. What I love about this mastermind is everybody has something valuable to share and they're all sharing it. There's not one person who's going to show up and just be like, I'm just here just to be here. They're all there to be participants, active participants. And ideally, people leave with new businesses created, new partnerships created out of this, because that's the essence of finding out, hey, I didn't know my body worked that way. I didn't know it could also do this. That's what we want to do at this mastermind. Um, and And so that's the next two big events. And then we're going to do up in Idaho. I don't know who watches this, but up in Idaho in middle of June, we're going to have another event for how money works for women, just talking specifically about how money works for women and how they can level up their game and learn the things that they need to know. The statistics are off the charts of how important it is for women to understand money and how little of them have taken the time to do so. So we want to make sure they get educated. Those are the next three major events that are going on for me. As far as following me, I would love for people to follow me on social media, get to see what that looks like. What are those little nuggets that I drop? And then I also have a podcast called Fuel Your Legacy Show that we'd love to have either guests on or even just listen in and send your feedback in there. And that would be great. The biggest thing, hopefully people take away from this whole conversation, is that you have the power to create, and everywhere you go, there you'll be. So if you want where you be to be better, then you need to change you before you go somewhere else. Change you. And that's the biggest thing about being creators. We get the ability to create us in the image that we want to be.
Perfect. Sam, I thank you for your time. I know you have a very busy schedule, so I'm really appreciate you making this space to be able to share with everybody that's watching, and so that we get to hang out a little bit. Can't wait for you to be back and continue in our partnership and our friendship. And I just want to let you know that this forum is always open for you. If you have any news, come bring them back to us, and we can't wait to hear more of you.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Federico. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day. Happy Easter, and the best to your wife and kids.
Okay, will do.
Take care.